And welcome to the podcast, Living Uncertain. This podcast is dedicated to obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, and the primary treatment, exposure response prevention, ERP. OCD comes in many forms, such as contamination, perfectionism, checking, harm, superstitious, religious or moral, sexual orientation, and/or relationship. ERP is the gold standard to treating OCD, and it focuses on deliberately confronting fears, the exposure, while refraining from compulsive rituals, the response prevention. With repeated exposures and without engaging in compulsions, we learn to tolerate anxiety and break the cycle of intrusive thoughts. We are a married couple that have faced both the challenges of OCD and the incredible healing that ERP can provide to your marriage, family, and your home. As a person who lives with OCD, I am much more than this diagnosis. We all can be.
Hi, y'all. This is Stacee, along with my husband, Mark. I want to thank you all for living uncertain with us once again. We are actually coming to you from the road today. We are on an old-fashioned summer road trip. We are headed into the state of Washington. And today's episode is going to be unique in that way. We want to welcome you all to episode number 20. And today we have a pretty special guest. We think she's a special guest as well. And it is, in fact, our daughter Avery, who is 14. And we are going to do a little Q&A with Avery today because, of course, as you all know from listening to previous episodes, our journey has quite affected our children in a lot of ways. And I've done the intensive ERP in order to be able to help have a different relationship with our children and help have the opportunity for our children to do things that teenagers and other children should be able to do. And so we're going to start off our podcast episode talking to her about how my intrusive thoughts and how my compulsions have perhaps affected her and or affected her brother, which she knows. And then we may discuss personally how her recent diagnosis of OCD has affected her and what she's doing as we are entering some ERP for her as well. So welcome to the podcast, Avery.
Hello.
So let's start off with this. How do you feel like my OCD, so when it was at its height, my intrusive thoughts, my compulsions, how were they affecting you and or your brother the most?
I think that, sometimes when you would be having, an episode or something, it would put a lot of stress onto me as well, because there's not much that, personally, I can really do to, help you through it, especially during ERP, because you're not supposed to, reassure you and stuff.
Yes.
And so not being able to reassure you was, really hard. So, yeah.
Do you find that before I even had the ERP, before I went through intensive treatment, were there things that were limiting to you because of my compulsions and intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. If I wanted to hang out with friends, I wasn't able to stay out really late at all because you didn't like me being out past dark, or just not even letting me go out at all because you maybe didn't like the location or something.
Mm-hmm. And those fears and thoughts of mine went beyond normal mother's intuition, normal mother's worry, and really became quite significant in holding you back and holding your brother back from being able to do what other kids and teenagers might want to have done, right? Okay. So what is the biggest thing that you've seen? This is a big question, kind of a loaded question, but since we've gone on this journey with ERP and you know about this journey, you've seen it, how has it positively affected you? Like, what's one thing you can think of that's made a positive impact?
I think that just, like, our whole family dynamic is, like, a lot better. I feel like, just, like, mentally, I feel like there's a lot less stress on everyone. And I think that we all kind of have a little bit more freedom now with you not being so filled with OCD, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does make sense. So in one of the most recent episodes, and I'm going to share this with you, this might be the first time that you ever heard this because you haven't necessarily listened to all the episodes yet, but in a very recent episode of OCD, of our podcast, I mentioned that one of the things that my OCD lies to me about is to tell me that, particularly because you're the younger sibling and because I've had more practice with Miles and the ERP, that my intrusive thought is often, if you're out of my sight, you're dead. How does it feel hearing that?
I'm not.
No, I know you're not, but how does it feel? Because I know that, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but you've had some of your own intrusive thoughts and your own compulsions to tamp down some of your OCD needs. And that has become one of my intrusive thoughts that I've been directly addressing with our therapist and with Dad through ERP, which is that if you're out of my sight, I automatically think that you're dead. And so again, how does that feel hearing that?
I think that it's like, I mean, I don't really know.
So the whole reason why we're on this road trip, baby, is so that you can meet one of your friends that you've met online. And we're going to be going to public places. And you and her might want to go to different vendors or different stores and stuff, and you might be out of your mom's sight. And sometimes that might limit, in the past, it would limit what you could do.
Yeah.
Now, the next couple of days, your mom's going to have to do some ERP still, probably by allowing you to go a little bit out of sight. I mean, you probably don't even know that or realize that.
Yeah.
So are you going to be able to reassure your mom when you have to walk out of her sight?
Am I allowed to?
No.
Tell the listeners, are you allowed to reassure me?
No, I'm not.
Is Dad allowed to reassure me?
No.
What do you think one of my first questions is going to be once you've left my sight?
Probably, I feel like a default question is like, is your phone charged?
Ah.
Do you have your phone?
That'll be my first question to you, yes, because that's often a compulsion.
One would be like, are you going to be okay? Like, asking me about, like,
Yes.
I'm going to be okay. Because I feel like, obviously, like, I can't speak, like, for how you feel, but I feel like if I reassure her that, like, I'm okay, then it makes her feel like she'll be okay. But then if I don't let her know, like, whether I'm going to be okay or not, then that just kind of leaves her hanging with, like, well, if she's not okay, then I'm not.
Right. And that'll leave me sitting in a very uncomfortable feeling. And that'll allow my anxiety to reach its height, which is what we've talked to our listeners a lot about as well, what the ERP process looks like, which is that I have to let my anxiety get to its biggest peak and then bring it down on its own without engaging in the compulsions, and mine being that checking in and reassurance tendency, especially with your dad. Now, I feel as though prior to our ERP, I would be asking your dad at least 10 or 12 times if you were okay, if he thought something had happened to you, in which he would constantly reaffirm and reassure me, which was never breaking the cycle of my compulsions. And that's the biggest thing that we've learned and want to continue to make progress with. So how do you feel about wandering away or going somewhere different with this new friend of yours where perhaps you're out of my sight?
I think that, through all the ERP that you've gone through, it'll be a lot easier, but obviously you can go through so much ERP and you'll still have times where it's difficult because OCD is just something that you have to, yes, you can work through it and things can get a lot easier. You're always going to have those little times where you're still going to want reassurance and you're still going to want
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we're also going to be meeting your friend's parents. And there's potential that there will be some anxiety on my part once you've left my sight and I have to work through that anxiety. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that, obviously I can't reassure you and tell you that, I think it'll be okay. But I think that, I know them fairly well. I know that they are good people. But I can also understand that, especially because this is a place that I've never been before. You guys haven't been.
Right.
And so, it's different from being in Arizona. So I think that even just makes it harder.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And I have to say, I'm a little trepidatious about that myself, because there's one thing about showing my anxiety to your father or even to your brother. When I get to that place, and so I'm so glad we're doing this experiment now at this time, once the ERP has already kind of settled with me, so that I can have an easier time allowing you to do what we're about to do. But I definitely see where the challenge is going to be. And I love what you said earlier too, Ave, because OCD is an ongoing, continuous thing. And even though you go through ERP, OCD doesn't just magically go away, and it's not magically cured. And that's really something that's important in what we're trying to get through to our listeners too, and to have them share their experiences someday with us, because we know how hard it can be. So as our first official guest on Living Uncertain, would you like to share anything about yourself or about potentially some of the recent diagnosis that you've had as well?
I think that, obviously you didn't get your diagnosis of OCD till way later in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very lucky that I'm getting it earlier. So it's something that I can get a hold of and still have a lot of time to process it.
Absolutely.
Without, having to, without being a lot older. But it still is a scary thing because, OCD is OCD and it's not easy.
So the past 3 years you've been online with school. Can you talk about why you chose to do that versus be in person? Why the in person was a little bit of a struggle?
Yeah, so obviously I have a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of things that are also OCD related that you have to do when doing in-person schooling, and I think that it was just something that I didn't even want to try or attempt to get better at, and it can be something as simple as raising my hand to go to the bathroom. That makes me really nervous to do that. Or having to make new friends and all of that type of stuff can be really triggering for me. And so sometimes just going online where I don't have to worry about that type of stuff can be a lot easier. But then of course there are also things that doing online can shut you out from not having as much of a social life and not even really being able to care for the OCD and anxiety that I have. So obviously there's pros and cons, but for me, because of how bad it was, doing online was just like the easiest like escape for me from my OCD and anxiety. But obviously, you know, I've started going to therapy and stuff for it, so now I will be going back in person for high school. And I feel more ready for that. But obviously, it's still like scary and stuff. So, yeah.
So what are some of your OCD tendencies that you deal with on a regular basis?
On a regular daily basis, I would say, you know, a lot of like, for example, like, oh, I have to touch this doorknob 10 times, otherwise my mom is gonna die, or, you know, a lot of like that, like touching stuff a certain amount of times, otherwise someone might die or something bad is going to happen. And I think that, and also, a lot of like contamination, OCD, I have a lot of that, and I also feel like I also feel the need to seek out for a lot of reassurance. Quite often. And that can be pretty.
In terms of your contamination OCD, do you want to talk a moment about what that looks like on your everyday life?
Yeah, so I wash my hands, I would say, pretty regularly. And also, I do not let other people like drink off the same straw as me. Like, even just like my mom and my dad, I don't let them do that. I don't like when they do. It makes me really frustrated. Or like my cousin, like she'll ask to, and I always say no, like don't do that. And now I've done it for so long that even now she just knows to not even attempt because she knows it'll frustrate me.
Mm-hmm.
And
What about can we talk about your bedding and what that looks like?
I don't like when any of my bedding touches the floor. That is like a big thing for me. So for example, if I'm washing my sheets, but I'm not gonna really wash my comforter because it's not really necessary, I don't let it, you know, most normal people would maybe just set it on the floor. I cannot do that. Even if I sweep them on my floor beforehand, I will not put it on the floor. That's like a big thing for me. Because then I immediately assume that it like has like gross stuff on it, even though it probably doesn't. But of course that's not what my OCD tells me. So I have to put it like on my parents' bed or on a chair. And yeah. Or even just like my pillows and stuff as well, and my stuffed animals, those have to be on like a surface and not just on the ground because I don't like that.
And you mentioned, and I'm so glad you did, that you've started therapy and that you're excited that you have gotten this diagnosis earlier so that you can get a hold of it and a handle on it earlier in life. And we're so very proud of you. Both your dad and I are so proud of that and excited for what this journey could be for you. What is something that you perhaps learned? I know you've been doing a lot of the psychoeducational piece with your therapist. What's something that you've learned about OCD that you kind of want to talk about or share?
I feel like I've learned about lots of types of OCD, you know, like different types, because people mainly assume, like, just from like an outside perspective, that like OCD is just like having to color inside the lines or something like that. And even, you know, before I got my diagnosis, that's what I always thought of it to be as. But then once I started going to therapy, I discovered a lot of compulsions that I had that I didn't even actually recognize as OCD, but they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was very eye-opening.
That was the first thing for me as well. And the most eye-opening for me too is things that I had just been doing as a regular that I thought were just part of my everyday life that ended up being compulsions related to OCD. That was very eye-opening for me too. So, yeah. Have you been happy with the therapy process so far and what you've learned and what you've tried to implement?
I think that, like, your very important, you know, having somebody that you can actually trust and work well with. And I'm very lucky that it was pretty easy for me to find somebody that I do like working with.
What was one of the first things that we tackled for your ERP? Do you remember?
I don't think I do.
So you had a ritual every Sunday. You want to explain it now?
So I had, like my dad said, I had a ritual every Sunday where I would have like a Sunday reset, essentially, where I would deep clean my room, I would clean my bedding. I would do what I refer to as an everything shower, which is like you normally take a shower, you wash your hair, you do all of that, but I would do all that like times 10. And I'm not even sure I have shared this with you guys, but like I wash my hair like several times in a row just to really make sure that it's like really good. And I would have to do that every Sunday, and like I sail, and so if there was like a Sunday where I was supposed to be sailing, sometimes like I would skip out on sailing just to do my Sunday reset, my ritual, just because it had to be done. And if it didn't get done, I would become really stressed out, and it would be really hard for me.
So what did you have to end up doing instead of doing it on Sunday?
I had to do it on Saturday instead of Sunday, which in theory may not seem like a very big deal, but to me it really is. And you know, even just doing it a day before or a day after is really like what's really hard to me.
Could we touch a little bit on your eating?
Oh yeah. So my whole life I've had a really hard time with like my food palette. It's very limited. I eat the same thing for breakfast every day. I eat the same thing for lunch. I eat the same thing for dinner every day. It's just a constant repetition of I just eat the exact same thing. I snack on the same things. Because I have a really hard time with trying new foods, just because I have this thought process of like, no, I'm not gonna like it. There's no way, like, you know.
And so one of the things that you do eat are chicken nuggets. And when you make them at home, you have a particular number of them that you have to make.
So I have to make specifically 5 nuggets. I can't do 4, I can't do 6. Like, it has to be the number 5. But I did do some ERP on that, and I started making like 6 or 4 instead of 5. And so now that's something that's gotten a lot easier for me as well. Not having to that specific.
Do you remember the first time you ever had to do that particular ERP moment and how you were feeling in the moment?
Yeah, it was very in the moment it was very stressful, and even just like the thought of doing it beforehand, I was very hesitant of even doing it. There were a lot of times where, because throughout ERP there will be a lot of moments where you'll just want to give up and you won't even want to try anymore because it gets really hard. But I persevered and I kept going, and obviously there was a very good result out of it, and now I don't feel the need to do that specific number as much anymore. And but yeah, during the process of it, which was it was very stressful for me. Yeah.
No, that's very brave of you today, Ave, to come on to the podcast and to share all of that. Dad and I have talked multiple times about how we try to keep our podcast as raw and as, you know, as real as possible and as authentic as we can. And this was just another way that we could do that for everyone listening. And is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to share?
Not really. I just think, stay positive.
That's a great message. And especially for those of us who have OCD. and who are actively going through ERP. You said it very, very well, which is it gets very hard and you want to give up, but you see the result on the other side and it's exciting and it makes you want to keep going, right? Excellent. Well, we're very proud of you. We're excited about your incoming school year, going back in person. We're so thrilled that you're taking on this adventure of ERP and trying your best with it and seeing the results. It's very exciting for the whole family. So thank you for being a guest on our show today.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode and living uncertain with us. We are not therapists, and this podcast is intended to provide information and support. It should not replace traditional means of seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. If you like this episode or would like to hear more, please like, subscribe, or share with someone you think may benefit. Here at Living Uncertain, we're building a community of support. If you and your significant other would like to share your story, we would love to have you on the podcast. Please click on the link in the episode description and fill out the interest form.